Hi, Anna Porter here. Today I want to have a talk to you about that downsizing generation and how there's a backlog of retirement villages causing some problems with the housing market supply. I know that sounded quite complex, but let me walk you through it. Right now we're seeing that there's a lot of baby boomers looking to try and get into retirement villages. So when I say retirement villages, let me give you some definition around exactly what I'm talking about, because there is some confusion out there as to what a retirement village is. So there's different types of retirement stages and aged care sort of facilities. You've got your top end, which is nursing, what used to be known as nursing home. They're now called residential care facilities, but traditionally nursing homes. That's where mum or dad are probably a lot older. They need daily care, so there's people that live on site or work, not live on site sometimes, but typically work around the clock. You might have registered nurses, you have qualified care providers. They do meals, they do cleaning, they do cooking. They basically look after all of your care needs. So if mum or dad, they're usually 80 or 90 odd, if they have a fall, if they need more help, someone's there to help them through that. The costs to go into these facilities will vary a lot, but usually what happens is you'll pay what's commonly known as a bond or a RAD. You buy in, you might pay, call it $800,000 to buy in. And that sits in trust, and then if you sort of like sits in trust, you basically get it all back when you exit the facility. There's also ongoing daily care fees and things like that, which you don't get back. Alternatively, if you don't have that sort of $800,000 to buy in as a bond or a RAD, you can pay a DAP, or what's known as a DAP, which is a daily accommodation payment, which you don't get back. So that's on top of the other daily accommodation fee. So it's a higher daily or weekly fee to live there, but because you haven't put in that initial big amount, you won't get that back in the end. So a few different structures to get in, and financially it can have a big impact on the family depending on how you approach it. The next level down, which is probably what I'm more so referring to for this sort of segment, is retirement villages. So they're resort style independent living villages. So it's almost like living in a hotel where you often have pools on site, you have restaurants, you have a real lifestyle community, but you live in individual independent units. But they bring in a lot of lifestyle facilities that suit retirees. So you'll have maybe aqua aerobics and hydro and physios and hairdressers and little outings where you do daily outings to all different local community things. And there's a real aspect around that social well-being. But also they have people come in that can give different levels of in-home care, from helping with a bit of cleaning to helping with cooking and beyond. Very different financial structure. So how they're all a little bit different from one facility or one resort to the next, because it's all weighted in different contracts. Most commonly what we see is you buy in, at a rate of, call it $1 million. Once you've stayed there beyond 5 years, and it's scaled under 5 years, but beyond 5 years, you only get back 70% of what you originally paid. So buying for $1 million, you get back $700,000 after 5 years. But if there's any capital growth there, if they go resell it for $1.5 million or $2 million, you don't get any of that. Plus there's also ongoing daily fees that you don't get back for the use of the facilities and the services they bring on site. So the aged care, that residential care sector, is much more there to protect. It's government regulated and it's very heavily legislated. They're very much to protect the consumer or the resident, whereas the retirement villages sector, probably a little bit more weighted towards the operator financially than it is the resident. But hey, you're looking at going into a retirement village and a resort style lifestyle for the last 10 or 20 years that you can really enjoy life before you need more care, and you've worked hard for every dollar, and you've probably got a home worth a fortune, especially if you're in Sydney or Melbourne. Why not? If you're happy to say, this is what I'm happy to spend on this, go for it, because that's what you've worked so hard for. So why am I bringing this up? Because what we're seeing is there's a big percentage of the population of baby boomers at the moment. I think the number's about 20% of the population are currently in that baby boomer generation, which is massive. So what that means is all these baby boomers are looking to downsize and go into a lot of these retirement village communities, but there's just not enough of them. So when there's not enough of them, this creates problems, especially around the metropolitan areas and the capital city areas. there's waiting lists of 200, 300 and 400 strong. And we know this because we've been working through that sector. So we've got our property investment division where we help people buy investment properties, help people buy homes. We've also got a division where we specialise in helping people buy into aged care facilities and retirement facilities. We've got an aged care specialist that works through that transition. So we're in this every day, and we're through our asset advisory division where we work with big organisations. We often work a lot with the operators and people in that space as well. So we see it from all different sides of this sphere. And what we're seeing is there's just a lack of housing accommodation in that sector. So what does that mean for the market? Well, there's two sides of the market it affects. It affects the younger families or young couples that are trying to either get into the market or do that upgrade. So young couples probably own a unit, looking to go into their family home because they might have a couple of kids now or be having a couple of kids. They want a bigger home, yet there's these baby boomers that are rattling around in this big old 4 or 5 bedroom house and they want to downsize, but they can't because they cannot get into what the next step for them is. So there's a big backlog of properties that could be put on the market to be sold and not moving through that process, because if mum and dad can't move on to the next stage of life, well then they won't be able to free up the house to sell, because where do they go? So it is creating, we joke in the office, it's the cause of the smashed avocado crisis. You can't get into the property market, they're blaming the smashed avocado crisis. Well, this is the true crisis. Let's blame mum and dad for this. We blame them for everything else in our lives, don't we? This is really mum and dad aren't freeing up housing supply. So, there is the question mark there of how do we get that next step for them so they can free up some stock in the housing market. Should the government be stepping in? Perhaps. And then there's the other side of it that is much more of interest in which we deal with in our asset advisory division, is there is a growing market sector that's not being catered to at a level it needs to be. So we're talking to big organisations like members of Clubs New South Wales, so leagues, clubs, RSL, golf clubs. We're talking to organisations that want to provide housing in this sector because they've got the infrastructure, the capital, the facilities to do it. Some of them aren't necessarily, traditionally providers of residential retirement village care. They don't know how to do it, but they're partnering, we're joint venturing them with people that do, so that they can probably provide the accommodation facilities and the capital and the infrastructure, and someone else will provide the service offerings, the soft services that go with it, because there is so much demand and there is such a lack of supply, and these properties are selling. They are selling well and truly with inside market value. It's not like you look at a unit, let's say for example in the Sutherland Shire, you can buy into one of these retirement facilities at the same sort of price, if not more, than you just go buy a standard residential unit, and then you've got a higher cost to live there, but you get so much more in terms of facilities, and this is where people want to be. So as an operator, as a provider, as someone in the property market that's a bit more savvy, how do you tap into that? How do you create that supply? How do you get into this trend from the grassroots up so that you can become one of the players in this massive growth sector? And this is not an overnight, fly-by-night kind of thing. This is going to be a longevity where this sort of housing supply and stock needs to be provided. And as an operator of it, I've been pretty clear about that. It does work towards the operator's favour in terms of the financials, more so than the people going into the facilities. But the people going in are at the point where they're like, hey, if this is where we want to live, this is where we want to live, because this is the lifestyle we've worked so hard for. So there's a real gap in the market. There's a real opportunity for anyone that knows how to play in that space. And something that we do at Suburbanite Asset Advisory is we help people get into that sector and help them understand how they can do it, even if traditionally it's not an area they've played in. And it's something that we're very prevalent and passionate about, building out that sector of the market so that it can free up that housing supply for the rest of the marketplace, because this has a huge flow down effect. And it is something that I think it's only a matter of time for the government really does wake up and say, this is part of our housing crisis right here, right now. We need to get in and fix it. But if you're someone that knows how to get in and be a player in these sectors and get in early, or you don't know but you want to know, we'd definitely love to have a chat to you, because this is something we're really working towards, making sure this gap in the market is filled, and it's filled right. So if you're out there and you're one of the smashed avocado crisis kids, blame mum and dad. Sorry mum and dad, but it really is that flow down effect in that marketplace, and it's only going to get worse as that bottleneck keeps pushing through. So just thought I'd share that tip with you today, and it's sort of that interesting little point. We go from high high level down to how it affects everyday mums and dads and everyday home buyers, but that's how it works, is this filter through effect the market, and this is how one market bumps into affecting the other market. So if you want to have a chat about anything along those lines, you want to know more about how we can work in this sector together, or if you're there trying to buy and you're just frustrated, see if you can find mum and dad a really nice retirement village that they like without a waiting list 3 years long. Happy house hunting, everyone. Have a great day.